Bruh, bruh, bruh. Well, hey there, everybody. It is time to review a game that has been on my Steam wishlist for about a year. And this game came out a year ago. So that's, yeah, basically somehow I heard about it right when it came out. I don't know how, but I did. That's what happened. Anyway, so let's get two things out of the way right off the bat. First of all, Whisker Squadron Survivor. I don't love the name of this game. I forget what it is all the time. I remember what it looks like because you have a kitty making that very, both arms forward aggressive face that everyone makes in Gundam series, because how else do you show, like, no, I'm fighting really hard in my fighting robot. You put both arms forward, you grit your teeth, you make a very determined face, it fills you with determination, and then there you go. Anyway, so yeah, don't love the name, but I can identify it by the pictures, so at least there's that. And secondly, like, I mean, the name isn't a strong name, you know, like something like Starfox, for example. Strong name. Yeah, speaking of Starfox, this is basically Starfox. I know that you were thinking it, I were thinking it, we were all thinking it. There's a couple of twists, though, that make this not exactly Starfox, so, yes, let's discuss. So, you are a cat person, a person cat, an anthropomorphized cat, who thinks that you're interviewing for a writing job, but basically they just chuck you into the cockpit of a spaceship, and you go off and fight swarms of killer robots, which are plaguing the city of the future populated by kitties. So, yes, that old gem. Anyway, now, very much like Starfox, this is an on-rails shooter, complete with aileron rolls, which are not barrel rolls. I'm sure that you've heard at this point that an aileron roll and a barrel roll are not the same thing, although everybody thinks they are, but you've got to be a bit of a bigger airplane dork to know the difference. Just Google it. Google it if you don't know the difference between a barrel roll and an aileron roll. Aileron roll any idiot can do, and a barrel roll actually takes some piloting skill. Anyway, regardless, so it's an on-rails shooter that moves fairly quickly, not as slowly as I made it move. I forgot that I had a boost button until late in the footage capture process, and so, yeah. There's always one button that I forget exists in any game. I don't know why. I will, like, completely forget about core game mechanics. Usually things like how to block, which is why I go full, melee berserker in most fighting type games, because I don't remember that blocking is a thing. Anyway, I didn't remember boosting was a thing in this game. But everything uses energy. You have a little energy bar, which this is where it gets different from Starfox. So you have a little energy bar, everything uses energy. If you evade doing your aileron roll, that uses energy. If you hit that button once, you will just roll and it'll cast a shield, and whatever projectiles there are will bounce off, including boss projectiles, which is very handy, but you have to time it well because that shield only goes up for a second. If you tap the aileron roll twice, it will dodge and roll in the direction that you selected. So it's very handy, very intuitive way to dodge. You pick it up very easily and use it because it will, very much like ham boning, it will save your life someday. Anyway, so there's that. Also, did I mention this is roguelike? Yeah, everything is roguelike today. Nothing is not roguelike. If we can procedurally generate it, we shall. And so every playthrough is different, but it's funny, with a game like this, it hardly matters, because it would be really hard to memorize the levels anyway. I guess you kind of could over time, but yeah, it just moves quickly, and there are tons of enemies, and you're just, you know, interested in keeping yourself alive, so you're watching directly what's in front of you and making adjustments based on that, you know, kind of bullet hellish. It's not a bullet hell by any stretch of the imagination, but the tactic for playing it is very much the same. As you just watch out for what's in your immediate, like, about to hit you vicinity. And so, yeah, the memorizing levels, I don't know. They could have not... What I'm saying is they could have not made it roguelike, and it would have been just as fine. Because the other thing is that you decide how you pilot through every given sector. There are little dots on the screen that you can select to be like, okay, let's go to this spot, then this spot, then this spot. And some of them are going to be repairs, and some of them are going to be unknowns, and some of them are going to be, you know, standard stages. Some of them are going to be, you know, you can choose ones that are in dense fog, and then at the very end, there's a boss battle, you know, and regardless of which route you take, it takes you about the same amount of time to get to the boss, regardless of which path you take. But once you take a path, you are kind of set on that path. I mean, there are other choices you can make, but fairly limited. You know, wherever you set off at first kind of determines, you know, this is where you're going to hit your repairs, this is where you're going to hit your fog, and this is the time at which you're going to hit the boss, which is roughly the same regardless of path. Anyway, because that's the way the levels work, that again could also not necessarily require procedural generation, but whatever. It's fine. It's totally fine. I'm not complaining about procedural generation. I'm just saying that, like, of all the games that needed it, this one needed it less than most. They could have gotten away without it, but whatever. But yes, every playthrough is different, and there is a Starfoxy feel. It's a, you know, the on-railsy shootery part of it is handled very well, and it looks like it has learned from its forefathers in exactly the right ways, except for some. I'm gonna get into my gripes and complaints. My complaints and my grumbles. So there's one of my least favorite features in a shooting game, in this game, which is that you have your, like, there's always the support person talking to you, which, like, that would be fine if it were voice acted, but it's not. It's just text showing up on the screen, and it's supposed to be helpful, but it's not, because I'm not looking at what's happening in a text box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen when I'm in the upper left dodging bullets, you know. I can't read that text if I'm going to stay alive, and so I don't read that text, and I choose to stay alive instead. Yes, very much so. And so that's one of my least favorite things is, you know, non-voice acted dialogue in the middle of a shooter. Because, like, how are you supposed to get that information? How? It's impossible. I mean, you would have to be an insane level player to be able to focus on both what's happening with your ship and on, you know, whatever character is saying, which may or may not be helpful. You know, it may be things that you already know, or it may actually be helpful. I wouldn't know because I couldn't read it. So, yeah. Also, the game is not as balanced as I would like. There's a lot of grinding, and I did quite a bit of grinding to try and upgrade my ship to the point where I was staying alive long enough to where I could easily beat that first area, like the entire first scenario. And then you get dropped into the second one, which looks a lot like Tron, and it's really hard to navigate, and the enemies are way harder, like considerably harder, and you start dying pretty early again. And so now, like, oh yeah, now I need to unlock a new ship and get some more upgrades because this is apparently what needs to happen. And according to the creators of the game itself, like, once you are fully powered up, it'll take you like 30 minutes to do an entire run through of all the areas and to beat the final boss, which is, you know, I mean, shooters, like, they can't overstay their welcome, and they have to, like, you're not going to find a lot of shooters that are like, I'm as long as Skyrim. Like, that would be insane. Like, no shooter sticks around that long. And nor should they, because of the nature of the game itself. Like, you can't endure that much of it. And so, yeah, shooters are meant to be less grindy than this, quite frankly. So a lot of the unlockables are set at very, like, distant, like, you're going to have to play this for hours and hours to get the next unlock, which kind of dissuades me from wanting to play it that much, because that becomes an issue. Oh, yes. Yes, you hear the sounds of dog getting in trouble for eating things. Yeah, I do my recording in a lively household. I make no apologies for it. Anyway, so that's a problem. That drives me crazy how grindy it is. And yeah, by the time I recorded the footage, I had gotten pretty good at making it through the first area. But yeah, that second area still kicks my booty so hard. And so I need to do more grinding, but how much more grinding do I want to do? The game looks great, which is why I put it on my wish list to begin with. The in-game sounds are awesome. The music is kind of a weird choice. It's like light-ish jazz, which is like, all right, I guess that's what space kiddies listen to. So there's a lot to like about the game, but it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. It's not as good as, you know, say, well, Starfox or Starfox 64, but it is better than quite a few entries in the Starfox series. So, yeah. Anyway, it is a very fun game and a good game that's not perfect. So final score, I'm giving it a 7.5 out of 10 peppies, who's the one who tells you to do a barrel roll, and then you do an aileron roll, and then he's like, good enough. Anyway, so 7.5 out of 10 peppies from Starfox on the Whisker Squadron Survivor. And yes, I did have to look at the top of my notes to remember what the game is called, because it's not a great title. But it's a fun game. Anyway, people, that's going to do for this one. I will see you in the next one. Okay, bye.